Welcome to You Sip, I Sip, a weekly podcast with Northern Lights Winery founder Doug Bell, exploring the experiences from leaders in business, social media, and family. Now here's this week's exceptional guest.
Welcome to You Sip, I Sip. My name's Doug Bell, the host of the podcast. I have Rhea Stark here, co-owner of Col Juicery in Prince George, BC, entrepreneur, and definitely an influential figure within the community. You do so many incredible things. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for coming in today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed listening to the episodes I've already listened to and was really excited to receive the invite.
Oh, well, it was a privilege for us to be able to invite you. And I think you have so much to offer for our audience, especially thinking about, female entrepreneurs, building a life, making sure that you have a good work-life balance, and putting out positivity in the community. In particular, I just love how you work the social media magic for your business and really showcase great things within our community. So we are drinking Ursa wine because you've done some work with our products before in the past, and you quite like this product, I understand.
Yeah. So we've actually done a couple different fun blends with different wines from Northern Lights. We did this one in the summertime with our Splash, which is a watermelon basil juice, and made kind of a sangria. And it was just lovely. It was so refreshing. The wine really added some really floral, lovely notes. And the watermelon and the basil make it super fresh. The dangerous part is it was very easy drinking. So, you just kept wanting to drink more and more, but it was delicious. So I highly recommend if anyone's looking for a fun cocktail or a fun blend to grab a bottle of your guys' wine and some juices and just get creative with different blends.
Well, I think that's so great. And I'm really excited to talk about how you get this creativity later on, because I'm certain that this probably happened in a different style when you were younger. So do you remember maybe growing up, having creativity and using it for other things?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I was pretty serious in dance. And so I think that influences a lot of creativity in an aspect, but I wouldn't have considered myself a creative individual. And I don't even know that I still would, except for the lens of entrepreneurialism and having to problem solve. But growing up, I'm very structured. I love operations. I love processes. And even ballet was my focus in dance, and it's very structured. So even when you compare it to different styles of dance, like hip hop or tap, where you have to be a lot more loose, I found that very hard. Because I'm just so technically trained in structure and form and technique. So it was very interesting for me to, throughout my working career prior to opening Col, have to bring in some creativity and some entrepreneurialism into my roles, and then launching Col and really having no choice but to get creative. So it's been a big learning curve for me, I'd say.
Yeah. So where are you from?
So I grew up on Vancouver Island. I lived in Ladysmith. And then I completed my undergrad there at VIU. And after graduating, I actually moved to Vancouver. So I lived and worked there. I worked in operations for Aritizia for about 5 years. And that was a really great learning and growing experience. And while I was living in Vancouver, I actually met my now husband, Dennis, and we dated and did long distance for about 1.5 years. And when we made the decision that we were ready to make a commitment and take that next step and trying to decide where to live, we really tried to focus on what were our priorities. So what did we want in our future? What were our goals? We really wanted to be able to buy a house and travel and pursue further education. And at that point, I was still very in love with Vancouver. And so it was really hard for me to accept that we probably could achieve one or two of those things living in Vancouver, where in Prince George, we could achieve a lot more. So I said, okay, I will move up north. And so we made that decision, and I moved up in 2016 and really haven't looked back since.
Yeah. And so you're relatively new to Prince George, but growing up on the island in Ladysmith, which is, of course, right beside Nanaimo, there's a lot of similarities in terms of lifestyle and the people. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up on the island and maybe how that relates to your life now in Prince George.
Yeah, I agree. I draw a lot of similarities between Nanaimo and Prince George, and even down to industry. There's lots of forestry, there's lots of medical, there's the university. So even employment opportunities and industries that are available have a lot of similarities. The difference that I found right away, and even Ladysmith being a really small community, has a lot of town spirit and a lot of pride, but it's on a whole nother level in Prince George. You notice it right away. Moving in, the community is so proud, and there's so much kindness and friendliness. And it was quite a contrast, especially coming right out of Vancouver. But even when I think back to my time in Ladysmith and Nanaimo, it's still even on another level. And one really good example is that in Nanaimo, there have been a lot of independent restaurants that haven't survived and just haven't been able to make it, and some that have, but it's just interesting because they have a lot more chains, a lot more franchises that seem to make it, where here in Prince George, for the size of our community, we have a lot of really great independently owned businesses, and the community shows up to support them. So I think that just shows one difference between Prince George and Nanaimo, where we do really get a lot of that community support as like small local businesses, which is really cool.
As a young person growing up in Nanaimo, did you see some of these businesses, and were there some that you picked out in your mind and kind of felt a kinship to? Because obviously you ended up opening your own business later on. Was this something that you always had envisioned for yourself based on things you saw?
No, absolutely not. I loved supporting local. Like, supporting local has always been important to me, and I loved getting out to events and markets. So that's something that started young, and it was important to my family. So yeah, going to weekend farmers markets was always a regular activity for us. But I never thought I would start a business. It just wasn't something that I thought that I would take on. But shortly after moving to Vancouver, I met one of my now best friends, Zoe, and she's really the one who inspired and influenced my entrepreneurship endeavors. When I was living there, we would do a lot of side projects together. She started and sold a couple small businesses, and currently has a business. It's called Park and Fifth, and it's a women's dress company that is just thriving and growing, and she's doing amazing things. So I really do attribute all of my excitement and passion for becoming an entrepreneur to her, and seeing what she has done and what she's been able to do with her business endeavors.
Sounds like a bit of a mentor for sure. And did she ever bring you into those businesses? Did you see it from the ground up? And what was it about the work she was doing that really inspired you?
Yeah, she did. So for the first couple, I would help with a lot of content creation, doing a lot of marketing and, styling, planning photo shoots. That was an area that I was really passionate about. So it was cool to do that. But even getting to see how they did their sales and building up relationships with businesses was really fun to watch them grow. So once she sold that one and then started Park and Fifth, she started it the year that I moved away from Vancouver. So really saw her in those initial months when I was still in Vancouver, going out to factories and doing all of the hard work, building patterns, and, coming home and some days being so excited and other days being so worn down and tired and frustrated because something didn't work out, and really getting to see her through that journey. And then, maybe 6 months or a year later, really seeing all the accomplishments of that hard work was really inspiring. It was really cool. So right after I moved up to Prince George, or I guess just about a year after, her business partner went on mat leave. So I actually was able to fly back down and live with her for a month and help support in the business while her business partner was on mat leave. And so that was really cool. So to get an opportunity at still a small scale when it was just her and a business partner and, some external partners, to where now they have 3 stores across Canada and a pretty massive team. So I feel very honored and privileged to have seen it at such a small scale to then where they've gone now. And it's so beyond, my experience. We joke about me helping and getting back into the sales room or getting back into the product, like shipping or distributing. And I wouldn't know what to do because they've grown and evolved so much since that time. But it's so cool to see both different perspectives.
You strike me as someone who's much of a storyteller.
Yeah.
And you can describe things in vivid detail, and you can tell people in both visually and in copy what they're expecting and why they're expecting it, why it's right for them. Sometimes people get this from a mentor or a previous job, but sometimes they get it from their family or the way they grew up. Are any of those applicable to you?
Yeah, I'd say probably a bit of a mix. My initial thought is I've always loved marketing. I've always loved advertisements. I was actually just reminiscing on this a few days ago because we were talking about branding and how excited I get about branding and any marketing and noticing different brands in different places. We actually were just on holiday in Iceland and noticing all the different brands and really what captivates you. But even when I was growing up, cutting out pages from magazines and putting them on my wall and building collages was something that I just loved to do. So I think that really did impact how I look at things now and had a fire for that too. But when you talk about storytelling, I immediately think of my family. My family's quite expressive and, loves to tell tales and joke and, share stories. And so I can definitely think back to lots of family gatherings of just that happening, joking and sharing stories and, getting in heated arguments about hockey or whatever it might be, but having a lot of fun and being very enthusiastic, I'd say.
So you're sitting in Vancouver one day and you're having a discussion with your husband, Dennis, and you're trying to figure out what type of quality of life you want. You decide to move to Prince George. Did it ever cross your mind that, you didn't, what you were going to do when you arrived?
No, I said, okay, this is kind of a new journey. Let's see what happens. And even initially moving up, I did notice that there were some opportunities and some gaps in the market. But even in that moment, I said, do I want to take on this role? Do I want to take on being a business owner and, give up some of the things that you have to give up when you are the business owner? So we actually sat on the idea of starting Col for about 8 months, just to make sure that it was really something that we really did want to pursue. Because of course there's trade-offs, as you know. And so, just kind of worked and continued to explore and continued to think about this idea. But on the onset moving up, it was not on the radar at all.
But you were thinking about it, and you come from a background more of apparel maybe and design and maybe art, I don't know. So this seems a little bit different. The food and beverage business is a very difficult business. In particular, talking about like beverages are one of the most difficult things to make money at.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for it?
Yeah. So you're bang on. I had a very different set of experience and skills prior to Col. And even I did work in restaurants and cafes and was a barista and a server, but never back of house. So I never had any ordering, any process experience, anything like that in the actual creation of products. And then never mind actually running in a business. Like I did leadership roles in key divisions for companies, but not the whole scope. So it was a big learning experience. But for me, it really started in my early 20s. I went through my own health journey. I was constantly getting ear infections and was constantly sick. And I was a very active, healthy, young person. And every time I would go to a doctor, they would just put me on antibiotics and say, take these, you'll be fine. But I really didn't want to continue down that road of like, I'm just always going to have to take antibiotics and just always going to be getting sick. And I really wanted to get to the root of the problem. And my experience led me through ear specialists, allergy tests, and nothing was really turning up. And so I finally went to a naturopath. They did this really cool test and really found out what worked for my body and what didn't, because everybody's bodies are different, and was really able to like hone in on some areas of food items that weren't sitting well with me. As soon as I eliminated those food items, I was feeling so much better. I didn't get sick like ever. And when I was being really thorough, I would say, and really being mindful about not including those items, I just felt the best that I'd ever felt. And so realizing the impact that food can make on how we feel and how much better I felt, and I didn't even know that I could feel that good. I think a lot of us, we get so used to what we eat is what we eat and how we feel is how we feel, and we don't think that maybe there can be that big of a difference. But going through it personally and seeing and feeling the difference that food really made was so inspiring and motivating for me. And so that set off my journey of just education and learning and growing and really trying to build a good foundation in recipes and different techniques to really keep building on this momentum. And that's when I actually started juicing for myself. So I started juicing out of a blender and squeezing everything through a nut milk bag, just so I could make my juices weekly, and make lots of smoothies and, do lots of plant-based meals. And that's where I started. And then the nice part about living in the Lower Mainland was if I didn't have time or I didn't have groceries, I could just pop out and grab something on my way to work because there was lots of options throughout. So that's where it all started for me. And then the big shift and transition when I moved up was just that it was really hard for me to find those whole food healthy smoothies or any cold pressed juice options, because it was so limited when I moved up. And so I was really missing having those like quick and convenient options that supported my overall health and well-being.
That's an incredible journey, and there's a lot to pack in there. But I kind of want to stick on that health journey for a few minutes, because I think it's really helpful for people to understand how what you put in your body creates, the environment that is going to make you more successful, give you more energy, your mood, your health, obviously, your ability to function, all of those things change. So there are a lot of people out there that maybe they understand this to some degree, but they don't really know where to start. So what do you recommend for people thinking about this?
Yeah, I think it can be very overwhelming when you're just kind of diving into this, or trying to get started and you don't know where. There's so much information out there. Everybody, again, is so different that it can be hard to find the right fit for you. Ideally, if it's available to you, I would try and work with a practitioner, a dietitian, or a doctor, just to kind of narrow your focus. Because if you don't really have, like, say you're like, I'm constantly tired. Okay, that's a great path. Let's dive into that and understand what levers can we pull to help you improve your energy. And sometimes that's going to be through sleep. Sometimes that's going to be for food, or maybe it's physical activity. But if you could narrow into a couple of different focuses, then that'll help build a plan that will help achieve a different result than what you're currently experiencing. Something that is so interesting is that we often hear people say, well, I was eating this and, it's healthy, but it didn't fit, like it didn't sit right, or, it gave me a stomach ache. It's like, absolutely. Again, bodies are so different. And just because something is deemed healthy doesn't mean that it's right for you, right? And so it's really listening to your body, understanding like, okay, I ate broccoli and now I'm really bloated. And even though it's healthy and you think that it's a good thing for you, but if it's causing that effect, then maybe eliminating it or trying a different way to cook it. Because oftentimes if you're eating it raw, it's going to be a lot harder to digest versus if you're steaming it. So there's a lot of like small changes you can make, but I think it's really important to start really listening to your body, seeing how you respond to things, and then making those tweaks. I often ask when people come up to our juice and smoothie bar and they're like, what do you recommend? And I say, okay, well, how are you feeling? And they're like, oh, I don't know. What do you mean? How am I feeling? And it's like, well, like, are you tired? Yeah. Are you bloated? Are you groggy? Like, what can we find is the right fit for you based on how you're feeling or what your goals are? So I really try and dive in and understand each person's needs to the best of my abilities. Again, I'm not a doctor or trained practitioner, so within our capacity, but even just getting people to think more about what they truly need versus having me tell them what they need, because I don't know. But yeah, so I'd say first of all, just start listening to your body. If you are experiencing a specific symptom and you're able to, trying to reach out to a practitioner or a dietitian, and then really start diving into those options and understanding what are the right products or produce or options to help fix that issue that you're experiencing.
One of the challenges a lot of couples have, or partners have in particular, is that their dietary needs and their dietary desires are sometimes very different. I know with my wife and me, we have very different ideas on what we want for dinner and for lunch, but we like the idea of having that meal together because it's also important for our bond and, to bring our child to the table and have him eating with us and eating the things we're eating. So that could be a little bit of a challenge. Maybe Dennis is eating the same things as you, but how did you navigate that when you got interested in this?
Yeah, it is very challenging. When I was cooking for myself and eating on my own, I could eat, of course, whatever I wanted and whatever style I wanted, and it was really easy. And then when we started living together and cooking meals together, we were at quite opposite ends. So I think it is both partners coming together and understanding what each person needs, and finding some balance in that. I think one of the big differences, especially between females and males, is that, men are very fortunate that typically your metabolism starts slowing down a lot later in life, where women typically have to learn that a lot earlier. And so that's one big gap. And I think my husband's starting to learn that. And he was a varsity athlete. He played sports for a very long time. So not only was he super physically active, but also having a longer metabolism run, he didn't really have to think about those things as early, which I think is very common. So that's one challenge where, women have to typically learn that a lot earlier in life. But then, yeah, just having an understanding of why it's important. And so often I try and explain, why we really need to incorporate greens into our diet and, why we can't just have, a meat and a potato and we need to have lots of diversity, because then he understands why I'm often nagging or pushing to have salads or have some greens in addition to whatever protein or carb we're having. Mm-hmm. And then for me too, to kind of be okay with having a bit more balance as well. So, if he wants to have a pizza night, then it's like, hey, let's enjoy this food. Let's take it for what it is and really like enjoy it and, enjoy that experience that it provides for the family, right? It's a fun, like really gourmet, kind of more comforting meal. So enjoy that. And then just make sure that the next day you're balancing that back out with some more greens. Something that we do really regularly is I try and do lots of salads and lots of bowls. And Dennis really likes to have wraps. So that's easy, right? We'll do like a taco salad bowl and I can put it into a big bowl and put all of my veggies, my greens, carbs, and whatever protein we choose. And then he can just build it right into a wrap. So that's kind of a nice win-win as well, where we're both still getting items that we prefer. We're both still checking that diverse nutrients in our meals, but we're both happier with what we're actually eating, because food should still be enjoyable, right? Not just nourishment. Yeah.
Yeah, food should always be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I had a similar experience with when I started dating my wife, and then she moved in. Of course, she wasn't my wife at the time. And what we found was she would often incorporate much healthier items into the things I was eating. So, instead of going with one type of option, you go with something a little bit better. So instead of, having ground beef, you can have ground turkey, or if you're not a meat eater, right, and you're eating, or if you're having milk, say, then going with a better choice of, if you do need the milk, maybe it's an almond milk or an oat milk or something like that. So that's always really neat when you can kind of come together. And I know for myself, I eat so much better thanks to her. And she probably has reciprocated by coming closer to me. Yeah. But at the same time, we also both enjoy it, and we try and, take the time that we have to incorporate it into a healthy lifestyle that we both like. And I think even with like pizzas and stuff like that, you can have healthier pizzas, or you can make your own pizzas, make, better crusts, or, different toppings, add more vegetables on them. There's different things you can do. Yeah. So it can still be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And yeah, finding those little alternatives is such a good way to make small improvements, but still keep the meals that you love.
Now, I want to get into Col Juicery now, and how it started and where the idea came from and how you developed the menu and how you developed your team.
Okay. So we started unofficially in the summer of 2017. We just decided that we wanted to see if there was any demand for the product, and just test the market and, see how it went. And we honestly thought that it would be a slower growing product because it was a newer concept to Prince George and the northern area. So we just started at the farmer's market. So just doing it one day a week, and I was still working full time, and Dennis was working full time, and we would juice madly on Friday nights. And the first couple of nights we were juicing until 2 a.m. in the morning, and then getting up to get ready for the market at 6 a.m. and, market days. But we were pleasantly surprised by how much knowledge and awareness there already was for cold pressed juice, and how excited our customers were that someone was making them available and had finally started bringing this product to our local market. So that was really exciting for us because we, again, didn't really think that it would be that in demand that early on. We thought we would have to do a lot more education and training and raising awareness around the products. So we did that for the whole summer of 2017. And then we began wholesaling in the fall, and picked up a couple different local wholesalers who sold our products for us. And that fall, we secured where our location is now, which is the Juice and Smoothie Bar at the Northern Sports Center. And so opened there in January of 2018. And that's when I kind of consider our official opening, because that's when we were permanent and you were operating 7 days a week and really expanded our product line. But the market was a really great way to start, to really get a first understanding of what the product demands would be, what we would need from a customer service aspect. So it was a really good way to start and learn and grow. And then when we took on our 7 day a week operation, we already had a bit of an understanding of what we needed to do. And then even still, it was a very steep learning curve.
And when you were doing that, you also were learning how to manage people, supply chains. I mean, your design, of course, is beautiful, which I totally expect, having talked to you, but even getting bottles and all that kind of stuff. What were like some of the biggest challenges when you were getting up and running, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah. So I have had experience managing people, and I love teams and I love customers. So those areas I felt very strong in. But definitely, again, back to the never having any experience in back of house in a restaurant or cafe. That was my biggest learning curve. So anybody who's worked in a kitchen, who's a chef, will just laugh when I said I don't know what a par sheet is. I didn't know how to contact and set up wholesale suppliers. Like, it was really starting from the very bottom. And so versus someone maybe coming in with a bit more restaurant experience, like operating or actually in the back of house, like they would have been able to, get up and running and past 6 months of my learning, just from the knowledge that they would have brought. But not having that, it was just like, okay, we're going to figure this out and find suppliers, whether it's for our packaging or for actual produce and our ingredients, and set up all of those channels. And so that was a lot of learning. And it was really just trial and error, just reaching out, trying to connect with reps or sales associates at different businesses and understanding the processes, and really asking a lot of questions and finding out what worked best for our business. And then on top of that, hiring and managing a team, finding the right fit, building up a customer base, like doing all of those things as well, while learning how to actually set up structure and have all of our processes built for how we actually just create our product.
You're 5 years in now. I imagine you're a little further along than you were, but do you feel like, was that something that came naturally to you, or I imagine you had to work really hard.
Yeah, I'd say there's pieces, and definitely prior experience helped in a lot of ways, but I don't think that when you're starting a business, there might be some areas where you get exposure, but I think until you get into it, and maybe you've had exposure with having family experience throughout your life, but until you get into it, I feel like you don't really know what you're getting into, which is a good thing, right? Because then people start and then they say, whoa, I had no idea it was going to be this much work, or, I was going to be doing X, Y, and Z. But once you're in and you figure it out. So in some areas, again, back to customers and like team management, I think having some previous experience there, I was able to build on that. And then in other areas, just struggling through trying something, seeing if it worked, trying to change quickly so that we can continue to improve without losing a lot of time or money from investing in the wrong products or the wrong processes, but really trial and error.
What was the biggest mistake or the darkest hour that you had in that first year, 2 years of the business? I'm certain there was several times you were really questioning, is this right? Did I do it, the way that I really wanted to, or is this going to work?
Yeah. Thankfully, we haven't had too many really tough learning experiences. But when I do think back to the first 2 years, we were so excited, and I had a really strong, supportive team. We were really little at that point, but, really powerful and mighty for such a small team. But we were also excited about the products we were putting out, which is wonderful. Except that we changed things, I think, too quickly. So we would launch a product and try it, and, then launch another product and try it. And that either resulted in being inconsistent for our customers. So maybe we had something one week and we didn't have it the next week, or we would launch something and it wasn't quite up to our level, so we would take it away. But then we'd have customers saying, hey, where did that item go? I really liked it. So learning how to be a bit more strategic with rolling out new products, so that we could then deliver on a consistent customer experience, but also all of the money that we spent on packaging that wasn't right. And, not taking the time to really think through the logistics of launching an item and just going ahead and buying 1,000 case box of a package item and then being like, oh, it's not quite the right fit. And then it sits in storage for however many years until I finally let it go, So I think and actually COVID has taught us a lot to be a bit more thorough and really think through those big changes. But I would say just really thinking through products, not too much though, because I think a challenge that a lot of people deal with is that they wait to launch something until it's perfect. And you learn over time, nothing is ever going to be perfect because you continue to learn and grow. And you look at something that you thought was amazing, and then you're like, oh gosh, I put that out there. But you want it to be in a good enough place where you feel confident, you can sustainably and consistently produce the product or the service, whatever it might be. And all of your operational workings, your costs of it. So it's as fully developed as it's going to be when you're launching a new product, so that you're not wasting a lot of money on unnecessary purchases.
think you touch on something that's really important for a lot of new business owners, and that's understanding also subjectivity, right? Often we in our businesses are so passionate about our products and our people and our place and our marketing and everything that's going on around us that we're very insulated and when we put things out, then our subjectivity really comes into balance because ultimately the customers will vote with their feet.
Yes.
Now, luckily, you've had a lot of customers that have been super supportive of your brand, and that's why you've been so successful. But has there ever been a moment where you've kind of come down to reality when you're like, this is the best product, this is going to be amazing, everyone's going to love it. You open up the doors and no one comes.
Yes. Yes.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, it's funny because it's often my favorite products or my favorite flavors of something. So one example is we did acai bowls, which are a smoothie bowl with granola and hemp seeds and toppings and fresh fruit. And I just love them. I could eat them every morning. I think that they're so wonderful. But yes, we launched those and, we had some customers, and even to this day, some customers still ask, when are you bringing those back? But the numbers of the customers who loved them were so much smaller than the customers who could take or leave them. And it was really hard for me. That was the first experience I think that I had with a product that I loved and I really wanted to keep. And so I kept it for longer than I probably should have. Not that it really cost us, like we had all the ingredients anyways. It aligned similarly enough that I could justify it. But when we think about the equipment and being able to actually scale and become really efficient and have your team confident in building them, those pieces were missing because we just didn't have the demand. So eventually I had to cut it. And I was so sad. But other than that handful of customers, like most people probably didn't know that we ever did them or don't even miss them. Versus like our chia parfaits, for example, like I quite enjoy them, but I would prefer to have an acai bowl where our customer base loves them. So it's like, okay, we're seeing the response in the physical, people coming and the excitement that they're sharing, but also in the numbers and the sales. So we have to embrace this and we have to expand on this item that is clearly has the demand and, people are just loving. So that's the route that we would go. And I find it funny how often it's my favorite flavors or my favorite products that end up being the poorest sellers or, the least in demand. But yeah, that was my first experience with that. And we've had different versions of that similar circumstance and just learning to like change and or adapt quicker over the years.
It's so, sobering and humbling sometimes when you pour your heart and soul and passion into something and you're 100% positive this thing is going to just revolutionize the industry and be amazing. When we got into winemaking and fruit winemaking, there's about 30 some fruit wineries in the province of British Columbia, and they're not large. Some of them are small, some of them are larger, and that's okay. But when we were creating our products, I remember that same experience of having to develop something for someone else in a way. And we often talk about it when we're doing wine tastings and we're developing new flavors. And our director of operations comes to me and says, "This is amazing, and you're gonna love this, and this is incredible." And I'm like, "Yes, this is delicious. I would have this all the time." But who is this for? Right? Who is going to drink this product? What are they pairing it with? How does this fit within the rest of our products? Are we just taking something that someone would buy? We already have 3 choices for them and we're going to give them 4 choices, which is great for the consumer, but are they going to buy any more products, or is this going to become a cost center for us? And really developing a strategy that you can take time to spend on a product, make sure that it's the right fit, and then release it and be totally okay if it flops, right? And then moving on to the next one. And you have to be flexible and nimble, and you can't take any of that judgment to yourself, because a lot of business owners feel like everything that they do is going to be perfect, and you have to have that confidence, but at the same time be able to back off.
Yeah, and make those calls when you need to. Absolutely.
Another thing that I think is really interesting about new entrepreneurs, or not necessarily even new entrepreneurs, but I don't think it's talked about very frequently, is after a period of time, the shine kind of wears off a little bit. whenever you open up a new business, it's very exciting. Your family is supportive. They don't mind if you're working until midnight or 2 in the morning. They're there with you. They'll paint the walls. Your friends are really excited about it. The customers are really excited about it. The staff are really excited about it. And then after a while, you need to find ways of reinventing your brand a little bit and also getting people excited about the next stage of where you're going. How have you approached that? And has there been any moments that you've recently said, had strategies to try and tackle this problem?
Thinking back to what makes you as the owner operator or your customers excited, I think about that frequently, because sometimes you can get really bogged down with the books or, scheduling or all of those pieces of business that are a reality and, maybe not as exciting, but really thinking back to why you started, the products that you're passionate about, to make sure that you can kind of keep that within yourself, but also within the business. And then from a more strategic lens, doing things like seasonal flavors to keep the actual products exciting. So within our juices, making sure that we have seasonal options that are only available for a limited time to keep those customers engaged and excited, and rotating throughout the year. Expanding our products as much as we can within a realistic approach as well, because again, back to, trying new products and getting so excited and really stretching yourself wider and thinner. You don't want to go too far because that becomes really unsustainable. So we're getting a bit more strategic about how can we also apply that system to the things like our baked goods, making sure that we're offering different diverse seasonal products while keeping like our customers' favorites. Because if we were to cut like our gluten-free oat fudge bars, people would riot. But they love that we bring back different seasonal items like our date squares or different things for seasonal flavors like pumpkin spice chias and things like that. So
pumpkin spice, everything.
Everything. Yeah, exactly. So trying to keep things diverse and changing. But I do find it so interesting how when we do have seasonals, they do well. But often still our core items still do just as well. But I think adding in that variety, adding in that diversity, keeping things interesting so that customers do get excited, do want to try a new item or are excited about a returning item really helps. I'd say that's the biggest one that has been more prevalent, trying to keep things sustainable and consistent. Consistency is really important to me because I want to make sure when customers arrive, they know that they can get what they want, but also adding in a little bit of excitement within our product variety.
Now that also is the same thing for yourself. That you've had to adjust the way that you approach the business and your personal life over time and rebalance things to make sure that you're still fresh and you're giving everything that you need to the business and outside of the business as well. How have you changed since you opened the business?
Oh, it's been huge. I'd say that I think similarly to most people, always striving for that work-life balance. I still don't think that I've achieved it. I don't know exactly what that means. I think it changes in different seasons of my life and what's going on or, what's going on in our community. And so always trying to assess and understand what is rest for me, what is giving me that social outlet, and, what are the different needs that I have during different times. And or like in peak seasons of the business, it's knowing and accepting that, hey, I need to really focus into this right now. But in slower seasons, like really embracing that and feeling good about that and not feeling like I should be working. So finding that balance between when you know that you have to hustle and then also knowing when you can rest. So it's still kind of evolving and I'm still working towards it constantly, especially as our lives grow and evolve. But something that I try to be super mindful of is right now I'm focusing on what is restful for me, because sometimes at the end of the day, like I'll work a 12-hour day and I'm on my feet. It's very physical, running around, super social. And so I need to rejuvenate by bringing everything inward and maybe having a quiet evening with a book and a glass of wine, or, just understanding what that looks like versus weeks where I'm in the office a lot and doing a lot of paperwork and I'm not getting that social outlet. Well, then maybe it's setting up some dinners with friends or coffee dates and things like that so that I still can fill that bucket in a different way, and balancing out those needs. But really being mindful, because sometimes like I'll sit and watch Netflix and, hang out and binge for a few hours. And I leave and I'm like, oh, that really wasn't restful, even though it feels like it should be. Like I just chilled and I just watched shows for 2 hours or whatever it might be, but not actually feeling restful. Where maybe going for a walk in the evening, as much as you're like, oh, it's physical, I have to move, and all I really want to do is sit, actually that fresh air and just getting some space away from work and home is really rejuvenating. So that's what I recommend to anybody who's really trying to find that balance and really try and find different sources for rest.
Definitely escapism versus rest can be very different. And I don't know that we always recognize that. For some people, watching 3 hours of Netflix is an incredible, relaxing point for their day. For myself, if I go for a run and then I can think a little bit about my day a little bit more, but I'm also resting or I'm actually rejuvenating my body. That really works for me. But everybody, it's different. Understanding what it is you need and when you need it, and that it's going to change.
Yes.
And not judging yourself for missing out on 1 week if you just didn't hit it right, just focusing on the next week.
Yes, 100%. Because sometimes maybe watching a show and having a really quiet, calm evening is exactly what you need. And then other times it's not. Sometimes it's hard to really listen to those cues. But again, it's back to listening to your body, seeing if what you're eating or if what activity you're doing is really serving you, and then making those changes.
And how do you deal with this when you're talking to other people? Because essentially you're now responsible for a whole group of other people. I think you said you have 12 staff members, which is an incredible number of lives that you're impacting. And how do you approach them? Because it seems like you have a very family positive environment.
Yeah, we definitely strive for that. One of our core values is teamwork. And something that's very important to me is having a space that feels supportive and also enjoyable, because our business is not, obviously it's serious in the sense that we employ people and, we offer a product and a service, but it's lighthearted in the nature of the products. Like it should be a fun place to work. So really trying to focus on that and focus on teamwork and the support that we can provide each other. But I would say I'm learning to get better at prioritizing my health and well-being, but I always put my team first. I always try and enforce that they get 2 days off in a row, and, we're not demanding excessive hours from them or really strenuous tasks when it's not necessary, or really balancing that. It's like, okay, we have a really heavy juicing day today, but we're going to balance it with tasks that are a little bit more administrative or a little bit lighter in the shop, so that we're being mindful about how we're exerting that energy or how we're asking our team members to do things and trying to add some balance and some variety. We have a lot of part-time and student employees as well, especially being located on the university campus. And so I always try to be mindful of my team who are in classes, because school, as you know, is very intensive and has periods during the semester that get quite wild with projects due and exams and midterms and all those things. So I try and let my team members know, let me know before you head into those weeks. If you need one less shift a week during midterm week, like I try and support them as much as I can, and just really communicate that if they give me as much notice, then I will do whatever I can to support that, so that they can still excel in school, but also not be burning themselves out by working so much at their job as well as so hard at school. So recognizing those things, because we've been there. I worked a ton when I was going through my undergrad, and definitely burnt the candle at both ends. So I've learned through my own experience, and really try to pass on that learning to my team, and really try and help them develop those skills and recognize when they are starting to wear themselves out and stretch themselves too thin, and finding ways to communicate with employers, because as an employer, you still need your team to be available and to show up and do a great job. But at the same time, like I want to be as supportive as I can to those team members so they can continue to do that for me.
It's incredible. It seems like a very family-oriented environment, and you do a great job of it. You, as an individual, seem very confident. You've achieved a lot of success, to be honest. And I think one of the greatest compliments people can give you is what your staff give you when you do a good job. But I'm certain that there's not every moment that you can give them exactly what they want, because you also have a business to run. And I'm curious what maybe your biggest challenge has been in the first 5 years of your entrepreneurial career.
In staffing specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even though we strive for a certain environment and dynamics within the space, we hire a lot of diverse personalities, and a lot of people with different education or backgrounds. And so that does just automatically bring in a different dynamic into the space. So we do the best that we can with training and onboarding and emphasizing how we work and what we're working towards. But things always slide, to different directions, and just making sure that we're managing that to the best of our abilities. I would say during seasons where I'm maxed out within my role, there's been times where I haven't done as good of a job as I would have liked to. And my people are always my number one. But if you just don't have enough hours in the day, there's going to be things that slide. So we had a period of time where our environment wasn't as kind and supportive and friendly as I would like it to be. I do think that I analyze things at a pretty high level, but even still, I just want that to be bursting from the space. I want our customers to come up and see what type of environment our team is working in. And again, I don't want my team coming in feeling like they're walking on eggshells or feeling like they're not excited to come in. So there was a time where things were just sliding into a bit of a negative space. I definitely think COVID and mental health had an impact on that. And there was just challenges that every individual was going through, but making sure to the best of my ability that I can support the individual in what they're going through. Because usually when you're having things that are creating issues, there's something at the root of that, right? So seeing if at first we can solve whatever's at the root and tackling it as quickly as possible so we're not letting it grow and fester. And then if it's not something that we can support with or we can change within the business, then just really resetting that individual's expectations, and making sure that we are outlining what we are looking for and what we want everyone to bring, and setting that expectation so then either they're going to step up and meet it, or they're going to choose to take their own path. And I think sometimes what I always think about in those situations is that we all need to learn those hard lessons ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's what that individual needs in that moment, is to have a bit of a tough conversation and a eye-opening and, really assess for themselves what they really want. And if we're the right fit, then great. And if not, then they can make that decision for themselves, and it's a good learning experience for them. And then maybe they'll come back to us one day, or they'll move on to something that's a better fit for them and be so much more happy and realize that, oh, that wasn't the best fit for me. So I think ultimately the biggest learnings I've had with people and with managing people, because we're all such different personalities, is just really tackling things quickly as possible, and really resetting those expectations, and making sure that we're all striving towards the same goals. And if we're not, then having to make that tough decision ourselves, or having the individual make the decision for themselves.
I had an employee that I had unfortunately had to let go about, I would say this is quite a long time ago. So this is like half a dozen years or so ago. Mm-hmm. And I saw them recently, and I had an opportunity to talk to them for a few minutes. And they told me that being let go was the best thing that ever happened to them, because it wasn't done out of spite or, it was very respectful. They just weren't completing the job that they were supposed to complete. And I encouraged them to go try something else, because I really felt like they were a great quality person, and that the environment that they were in was just not right for what they were skilled at. Mm-hmm. And they've gone on to be incredibly successful and had a much happier life. And they said, if that hadn't happened, they may have stuck it out for 2 or 3 more years, because we made that decision relatively together. They were very grateful for that. And so sometimes that is the best thing for a person. I want to touch on one more thing with your brand, because I'm really curious. They say a brand is not what people say or what you tell people your brand is. Mm-hmm. A brand is actually what people say about your brand when the door is closed. Mm-hmm. What do you think people say about your brand?
Gosh, I'd be so curious to know. I would love to know that. I'm sure often a lot of feedback we do get directly from those who do share is it is a more premium, or they'll say, oh, why is it so expensive? So I know that is part of it. But I would say in general, people come to us because of the nutrient dense and healthier alternative options that we have. So I think that I would imagine that's what people think of our brand is just, and sometimes they might consider things to be vegan not a positive thing. And or like, healthy options, not necessarily, they might not be saying that in the best light, but I think that that's a pretty broad understanding, whether that's something that you love or something that maybe doesn't fit into your lifestyle personally. But across the board, I think we're known for healthier food and beverage options.
Well, I can tell you from behind closed doors with my group of individuals, we've always talked about Col Juicery being bright, friendly, inviting, healthy, fresh, but more so than anything else, it's been community oriented, and that there's a face behind the brand. Even though often you share like your staff members and stuff like that, but there's always been this connection to the community, which has been about people. And I think that's why you've been so successful. And I think that's why you will continue to be so successful. I'm really curious to see where your business is going to go. Is there anything you want to share with us about upcoming plans and where you think your business is going to go? And is there anything you want to leave us with today?
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for saying that. Those are all keywords that we strive for. I know, again, back to diet and food and health and wellness being very daunting and very intimidating. And we often have people stop by the shop and ask if we're a franchise or, where was this founded, because we look like a franchise, which I always take as a compliment. But the fear of that is that we don't want to intimidate anybody. So being approachable and being friendly is very important to us. And I always say when onboarding our team, in whatever department they are in, but especially if they're customer focused, it doesn't matter if someone has been a raw vegan for years and they've, gone through their own health journey, or if they're just learning and they're starting. I want everyone to feel like they can approach us, learn from us, and start that experience with us specifically without feeling ashamed for lack of knowledge or unsure about what some of the products are that we offer. So those two things in specific are so important to me. So I'm glad that that's well received and the perception for your team. And in general, going forward, we're really excited, fingers crossed, to have a season of uninterrupted business operations. Even this year, it seems a lot further away, but we've already been through a shutdown in 2022. So we experienced that in January. It's further away in most people's minds, but we haven't even had 1 year that hasn't been interrupted in some capacity. We've learned and grown a lot through COVID and the challenges that we faced. But at the same time, we're excited to be able to just do our business, be consistent for our customers, not have customers be unsure if they're allowed to come in or if we're open or, those different challenges that we faced over the last couple of years. So just really excited to be seeing people's faces again, because for so long they were covered by masks, which was wonderful for a health aspect, but really missed smiling at customers and greeting people. Oftentimes they couldn't even hear you if you said hello. So just those simple pieces of seeing our customers' faces again and really being able to engage and have those conversations without running something out curbside and dropping it off and, not really getting that connection that we really thrive on from our community. So that's going to be such a highlight for us. It's already gotten quite a bit busier at our juice and smoothie bar because people are getting back into routine and ready to dive into their exercise regime again and trying to incorporate healthier foods after probably a bit more of an indulgent summer, which is wonderful. We're really excited to have that energy and see those faces again. For us, we're always looking at seeing if we can evolve and add more products that customers are inquiring about or, that they're hoping that we'll launch. And so keeping things interesting in our juices, and then also trying to add in more other nutrient dense and convenient grab and go breakfast and lunch options. So people can quickly stop in and grab something on their way to work or, picking up the kids from daycare or sports or whatever it might be.
Great. And where can they find your products if they haven't had a chance to try them before?
Yeah, so we have our juice and smoothie bar at the Northern Sports Center, which is on the university campus. We're open typically 7 days a week, except for holidays. And you can come in just into the lobby. You'll find us right away. You don't have to be a member or a UMBC student. It is public access and a public facility. If you don't make your way up there, you can actually order for delivery on our website. So head to our website, which is www.coljuicery.ca, and check out all of our products. All of our juices are on there. You can even order protein shakes and smoothies for delivery, which is amazing. So if you can't swing by, then have it delivered to your door or your office. And then even check out our baked goods and our goodies as well, because we all need treats in our life.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse not to have a great Col Juicery product. You are making a great impact to our community. Thank you so much, Rhea, for showing up today and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. We're going to share some of your social media platforms in the show notes as well. Make sure you follow them. And for now, thank you so much for listening. Next week, we'll see you again. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to You Sip, I Sip. Please hit the 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you'd like to learn more about Northern Lights Winery, text us at 604-670-4046 or visit us on social media at Northern Lights Winery.